All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our episode extras. We are very excited to have with us Geneviève DeBose Akinnagbe, who is just a fantastic and amazing educator, a literacy coach at a middle school in Watts. That's okay. We can raise the roof for that one.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
But thank you, Geneviève, for sticking around to chat with us a bit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me.
So I would love to start off. I think you have a bit of a fascinating journey. You are from LA and then moved to New York and taught in New York for a number of years, and now we're back in LA. So tell us about that experience. Who is the educator Geneviève who we have in front of us today?
Well, so let's see. So I started teaching with Teach for America here in LA in '99. I had just finished my master's in education and I knew I wanted to teach. And so I joined Teach for America. I was placed in Watts at Samuel Gompers Middle School, where I taught 6th grade English and history there for 2 years. And I learned very quickly that I did not really know what I was doing. And had an amazing time there and made great relationships with kids, but I wasn't the best English teacher, I would argue. And so I stopped teaching and went back to school full time to get my teaching credential. And I went back up, I went to Oakland and to Mills College and got my teaching credential. And it was great because I knew what I didn't know. So I said, I want you to place me with a reading specialist because I have 6th graders who are struggling readers and I don't know what to do. All I can say is sound it out. And that's really all I could say. Yeah. So I learned a ton that year and ended up connecting with some other Teach for America alumni who were opening a charter school in Oakland, Lighthouse Community Charter School. And so I was a founding teacher there for a little over 3 years. And that was an amazing experience, one of the best schools I've ever taught at, but also incredibly exhausting, opening a new school. And so, you know, I needed to take a break. I took a year off. I trained as a boxer. I lived in India for 3 months. I was a cocktail waitress.
Just to be clear, I did not know about these parts of the story until right now. The boxing and the
boxing is amazing.
And cocktail waitressing in
at a
Indonesia.
Jazz club.
Did you
No, I was in India for 3 months.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I was a cocktail waitress in Oakland.
Okay.
But it was just, has kind of been a trend in my professional experience because I think teachers need sabbaticals. I think like it's a way for sustainment.
Yeah.
So, but then I had worked at a Teach for America Institute in New York, in the Bronx one summer, and just fell in love with New York City. And I was like, I'm moving here. And so eventually, it took me like 3 years, but I moved 12 years ago, and I was working at a small school in the South Bronx. And I was there for 5 years, and then I got an opportunity to learn a little bit more about education policy, and I did a fellowship at the U.S. Department of Education as a teaching ambassador fellow for a year. So I got to work in the office of the Secretary of Secretary Duncan and really work on middle grades reform and what that looks like. And that was amazing because it gave me such perspective on, like the landscape of education and who's making policy and what they know or what they don't know about the ins and outs of schools. Yeah. And so that was our job to kind of provide that voice at the department. And after that, I was ready to go back to the classroom, but I got recruited to work at the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, where I worked to help organize other board certified teachers across the country for 2 years. But I really missed teaching. And so I returned to New York City and went back to the Bronx. And I was living in New York, but I returned to the Bronx and was teaching 7th grade at a school in the Bronx and loved it. Got an opportunity to be a teacher leader role there and loved my principal, amazing leader, and amazing colleagues. And my husband was ready to leave New York, so we came back to LA. Yeah. And now I was looking for teaching roles here, but I knew I was going to actually take a really big pay cut teaching here. And I was a little bit tired actually from really being in like such a high need area. And it allowed me, I talked with some folks and found out about a coaching position. And I was doing coaching in the Bronx, and it was a wonderful way for me to continue that work and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a long story.
I mean, I knew it was interesting. I didn't know it was quite that interesting. That's great. So I'm sure all of our audience now is really wondering, did you get to meet Obama?
Oh my God, I know, right? Dude, me and there are 5 fellows, 5 teachers from all over the country. We are like so tight. We were advocating all the time, telling all the assistant secretaries, we need to brief Obama on schools.
Yeah.
So I've gotten the opportunity to meet Obama or be in the room with him
Okay.
like a couple of times.
All right, that
The
counts.
only time I actually got to talk to him and touch his hand was at a National Teacher of the Year ceremony at the White House.
Okay.
And that's when I was actually back in the Bronx, and I told him, the South Bronx says hello, and he said, tell the South Bronx I say hi.
Did
and
he
I was
really?
like, and then I just lost it.
I think I might have been in the Bronx myself at that time, so I appreciate good looking.
Yeah, I was telling him, our people say hi. And,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah, I really wanted to meet Michelle, but we never got that opportunity either.
Okay. All right.
Someday.
So something that that I know about you that I'm sure our audience will find fascinating is you run a book club with middle school students and teachers and parents. It's a community book club, right? And it's called Project Lit.
Yep.
And tell us about Project Lit.
Yeah, Project Lit is amazing. So this is the power of Twitter, right? Like, I think Twitter is a phenomenal professional resource for educators because there's so much out there. And so I was just following this teacher in Nashville randomly. I think I liked something that he had posted. His name's Jared Amato, and he is a high school English teacher in Nashville. And he and his students read an article from The Atlantic, and they realized that they were living in a book desert. And so they wanted to do something about it. And so they'd done a number of things, but one thing they chose to do was to get more people reading. And so they launched these young adult book clubs for the community, and they named themselves Project Lit. And I was just following him and loving all the stuff they were doing. And then at the end of that year, he said, hey, if any of you want to start a Project Lit chapter, like, let's do it. And so, of course, I jumped on that. And we had an amazing chapter in the Bronx. And so we had Project Lit Bronx, which is going to be featured in this new documentary about literacy in the Bronx, which is coming out soon.
Nice.
And it was so powerful to see young, like, kids who, like, oh, they're readers, like, they're going to join the book club. But our book club also brought kids who may not have seen themselves as readers, but are people that like to talk and dialogue about stuff. They came in, and then I'm bringing my friend, and it's just very kid driven and like very exciting. And so when I came back to LA, there's not a Project Lit in Watts, and so I was like, let's start Project Lit Watts. And it's been fun. It's been a really different dynamic starting it as a literacy coach versus as a teacher, because it's really about relationships you have with kids. And so just slowly growing those relationships. But the word spreads, and when kids are like, oh, that book's about that? Oh, okay, I want to read that. Or this kid told me, we had a wait list at our middle school in the Bronx, in Watts, for like 30 people waiting for the book because we only had 30 copies. So we just had to like read it fast and bring it back,
Yeah.
But it's just a really wonderful way to get kids reading, but to also give them choice because they help select the books. And oftentimes in our schools, I feel like we're asking kids to read grade level text, which is important and amazing, but we also need to give them choice to read what they want to read, right?
Yeah.
So that they actually sustain that beyond the classroom.
Pleasure reading.
Yes.
Undervalued, perhaps, use of time in schools.
True.
Is there a web presence for Project Lit, or if people want to know more, is there
a heavy Twitter and Instagram presence?
Okay.
So Project Lit Watts is on Twitter,
Okay.
But Project Lit Com, like community, COMM, is the national Instagram and Twitter handle, which is really great to just. And they repost stuff from all over the country.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
So check it out.
If you want to know more,
Yeah.
At Project Lit,
Yep.
is that it?
At Project Lit
okay.
Com,
Okay.
COMM.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So in our segment today, you talked a lot about this this importance of being able to attract and retain teachers in our high needs schools. And I've had, a number of conversations with you about this, but I'm wondering if we can get like a little bit maybe more personal, like why does this resonate with you so much as a topic of great importance right now?
Yeah. I think for a number of reasons. I mean, I grew up here in LA. I went to LA Unified Schools, and I had a mom who knew how to navigate the system, so I never went to one of my home schools. I was always bused to school. And where I grew up, some of my schools would have been high need schools, right? But I know, like, that's my mom and that's my story. I know there are many amazing kids in the community I grew up in who had to go to their school and have a subpar education, right? I remember when I was an undergrad, I was tutoring at a local middle school in Berkeley in an English class, an 8th grade English class. And there was this one young man, Stanley, who was a young African-American boy in the class. And he wrote this thing that said, you know, they were talking about college. And he was like, oh, I can't get into Berkeley because I'm not smart enough. I'll have to just be really good at sports. And I remember that like crushed me as a 18, 19-year-old person, and thinking, wow, this kid really believes that about himself and he's been told that. And I just have a real sense of, like, there's so much amazing potential in our people and in our communities, and we kind of throw kids away by giving them a subpar education and expecting them to be okay with it. And so it's just a personal mission of mine, because I know how brilliant my kids are. And like the young lady who wrote the letter in the show and tell segment, one of the most brilliant kids I've ever taught in my 15 years. And I just know how brilliant our kids are, and so it's a mission of mine that I want to provide my kids with the best teachers that they can have. And if I can't control the system, I can control myself. And so I'll be there.
Yeah, when you first brought up the topic to me, the immediate kind of flashback that I had was about a school that I have done some work with, that shall go unnamed, but a school in a large urban area somewhere in the United States, let's say. And this school has been a place where, teacher turnover is a pretty regular thing. They're losing, a third of the staff every year, largely new and inexperienced people coming in, or a combination of those folks, and then teachers who are force placed by the district because they need an assignment. A lot of those people don't want to teach at the school, so then the kids wind up with a long-term sub. And there was a particular grade of students that had a long-term substitute for math for their entire middle school career, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or save a couple of months when there was like a person there who didn't stay. And it just, when I think about those kinds of things and think about, like, what does that do to a kid's trajectory and sense of, their identity as a learner, as a learner of math, or whatever subject it might be, right? If it's, anything. These are the real issues we're grappling with, right? And so, thank you for bringing that topic to our show. I'm going to close out with a question. If you, Geneviève, were queen of the education world tomorrow, and you could do anything to make things a little bit better, what would you do?
That is.
We'd like to end with easy questions.
That is a really hard question. Yeah. What would I do if I was queen of the education world? God, Jeff. I'm at a loss. I would do a million things. Okay, but one thing I could do.
You grant yourself a million wishes. Is that
right.
That's a good strategy.
I would. I'm really into talking and learning from people, so I would bring together. I would ensure that this is what I would do. I would ensure that every school in the United States has a phenomenal principal.
Okay.
My brain is doing a million things.
I was going to say everything.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? If I'm a queen, I can wish. I would ensure that every school in the United States has phenomenal teachers who are committed to kids, love what they do, are compensated for the professionals as the professionals that they are, and believe in helping kids achieve their dreams. That's what I would do.
Took
me a while. Yeah.
I would support your campaign to be
Thank
an
you.
education queen.
Yes.
So Geneviève, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time and your insights and wisdom. And folks, as always, you can find all of our content on our website. That's aotashow.com. You can find full episodes, everything you need there. Come check us out.